Some legends fade quietly. Others leave the world watching, holding their breath. There are moments in life that no camera is ever supposed to capture. Moments meant to stay private, tender, and far away from the world's eyes. But sometimes, the camera catches them anyway. And when it does, we are left with something we can never forget. For over 60 years, Robert Duvall gave everything to the screen. He became Tom Hagen, the quiet, calculating consigliere in The Godfather. He became Lieutenant Colonel Bill Kilgore, the fearless soldier who loved the smell of napalm in the morning. He became Augustus McCrae, the wise, weathered cowboy audiences fell in love with in Lonesome Dove. Every role felt real because Robert Duvall never acted. He simply became. But in his final days, the cameras captured something entirely different. Not a character. Not a performance. Just a 95-year-old man, sitting quietly in his home, speaking directly into the lens one last time. No script. No director is calling action. Just Robert, being Robert. And that is exactly why this video is so hard to watch. Because for decades, we watched him play soldiers, fathers, priests, and criminals. We watched him win an Academy Award. We watched him stand toe-to-toe with Al Pacino, Robert De Niro, and Marlon Brando and somehow still steal the scene. We built an image of him in our minds, larger than life, untouchable, permanent. But this video reminds us of something we often forget about the legends we grew up watching. They are human. They age. They tire. And eventually, they say goodbye. So what exactly did Robert Duvall say in his final video? What was running through his mind in those last quiet moments in front of the camera? And why has it left so many fans in tears, replaying it over and over, unable to look away? Stay with us, because before we get to those final, unforgettable moments, we need to go back. Back to where it all began. Back to a young boy who was never supposed to become an actor at all. Because to truly understand why his final video hit so many people so hard, you first have to understand the life that led him there. A life filled with rejection, reinvention, heartbreak, and quiet defiance against everything he was expected to become. This is the real story of Robert Duvall. Not just the legend on the screen, but the man behind it. Sometimes the most powerful stories aren't about the legend we thought we knew but the quiet truth we never saw coming. And by the end, you'll understand exactly why his final goodbye means so much more than most people realize. Robert Duvall was never supposed to become an actor. He was supposed to become a Navy man, just like his father. Born on January 5, 1931, in San Diego, California, Robert grew up in a household built on discipline, structure, and duty. His father, Rear Admiral William Howard Duvall, had spent his life serving the United States Navy, and there was an unspoken expectation hanging over young Robert's future. He would follow the same path. He would wear the same uniform. He would carry the same legacy. For a while, it seemed like that future was set in stone. The family moved constantly, following his father's assignments, eventually settling in Annapolis, Maryland, home to the United States Naval Academy. Everything around Robert pointed toward the same destination. But something inside him refused to follow the script that had already been written for him. School was never where Robert excelled. In fact, he often joked in later years that he was terrible at almost everything, except acting. It wasn't rebellion. It wasn't defiance for the sake of it. It was something quieter, something deeper. A pull toward a different kind of life, one that had nothing to do with ranks, orders, or expectations. So instead of enrolling at the Naval Academy, Robert made the first bold decision of his life. He chose to study drama at Principia College in Illinois. It wasn't the safe choice. It certainly wasn't the expected one. But it became the first step in a journey that would eventually reshape American cinema. Still, duty found him one more time. After graduating in 1953, Robert served a year in the United States Army. Rumors later exaggerated his service, painting him as a decorated war hero. Robert always laughed those stories off, admitting with his usual dry humor that he barely qualified with his rifle during basic training. Even in uniform, acting never let go of him. While stationed in Georgia, he joined a small amateur theater production, and in that modest, unglamorous performance, he felt something undeniable. This was where he belonged. Once his service ended, Robert headed straight for New York City, carrying little more than a suitcase and an overwhelming desire to become a real actor. New York didn't welcome him with open arms. Jobs were scarce. Money disappeared fast. Rejection became part of his daily routine. But Robert enrolled at the legendary neighborhood Playhouse School of Theater, studying under acting teacher Sanford Meisner, learning to chase emotional truth instead of empty performance. And in those cramped, unremarkable classrooms, sitting beside him were two other unknown, struggling young actors. Their names were Dustin Hoffman and Gene Hackman. None of them knew it yet, but three ordinary young men chasing an impossible dream were about to change the future of American film forever. Life in New York was anything but glamorous. Robert worked as a clerk at the Manhattan post office, sorting mail, driving trucks, and taking whatever job he could find just to cover rent. He shared cramped apartments with Hoffman and Hackman during different stretches of those lean years, three young men with nothing but ambition, wondering if success would ever come for any of them. It did. Eventually, for all three. But long before fame arrived, those years of struggle forged something rare. A friendship built not on convenience but on shared hunger, shared doubt, and shared belief in something bigger than themselves. Long after the world knew their names, Robert remained close to both Hoffman and Hackman, never forgetting the years they spent lifting each other up when success felt impossibly far away. While surviving in New York, Robert took nearly every acting job he could find. Summer theater became his training ground, especially at the Gateway Playhouse on Long Island. One production led to another. Picnic. The Crucible. Dial M for Murder. Bus Stop. The roles kept changing, but one thing stayed the same. Directors kept calling him back. Then came the moment that changed everything. When Robert took on the role of Eddie Carbone in Arthur Miller's A View from the Bridge, something shifted. Miller himself watched from the audience and saw something extraordinary. So did several influential people in attendance that night. Those connections opened doors almost overnight, leading Robert to his first major television opportunity on Naked City. It was the break he had been chasing for years. In 1962, Robert made his film debut as Boo Radley in To Kill a Mockingbird. Despite having almost no dialogue, he delivered one of the most unforgettable performances in the film, proving that silence, in the right hands, could speak louder than words. Throughout the 1960s, Robert built his reputation steadily, appearing across crime dramas, westerns, and thrillers. Audiences recognized his face even when they didn't know his name. There was nothing flashy about his performances. Just honesty. Just truth. Then came the role that would define him forever. As Tom Hagen in The Godfather, Robert delivered a performance built on quiet control, earning his first Oscar nomination. He returned for The Godfather Part 2, then stepped into one of cinema's most unforgettable characters, Lieutenant Colonel Bill Kilgore in Apocalypse Now, delivering a line about the smell of napalm that would echo through film history forever. Francis Ford Coppola once called him one of the 4 or 5 greatest actors in the world. But even at the height of his fame, Robert never chased celebrity. He chased truth. And that pursuit was about to lead him toward the most personal performance of his entire career. That pursuit of truth reached its peak in 1983, when Robert played a struggling country singer named Max Sledge in Tender Mercies. He insisted on performing his own songs, refusing to fake a single note, because to him, authenticity mattered more than polish. The performance earned him the Academy Award for Best Actor. His co-star Tess Harper later said Robert disappeared so completely into the role that she felt she knew Max Sledge rather than Robert Duvall himself. By the end of the decade, he delivered another performance many consider his finest, playing Augustus McCrae in Lonesome Dove. It was, in his own words, his personal favorite role of his entire career. A character full of humor, wisdom, and heart. On screen, Robert Duvall gave the world unforgettable love stories. Off-screen, his own search for love told a very different story. He married 4 times. He fell in love more than once. And yet, one dream always stayed just out of reach. His first marriage came in 1964, to former dancer Barbara Benjamin. She had 2 daughters from a previous relationship, and Robert became their stepfather, embracing a family life he never expected. For over a decade, the marriage endured, but by 1975, it quietly ended. Not long after, while performing in the Broadway production of American Buffalo, Robert met actress Gail Youngs. He later described it as love at first sight. They married in 1982, and Gail even appeared alongside him in Tender Mercies. But behind closed doors, things were complicated. Gail later described him as brilliant but relentlessly demanding, a perfectionist whose intensity made everyday life difficult to sustain. After 4 years, they divorced in 1986. A few years later, Robert met dancer Sharon Brophy during a tango class. They married in 1991. She preferred a quiet life, far from the spotlight, and for a while, it seemed like Robert had finally found stability. But after 4 years, that marriage also quietly ended in 1995. 3 marriages had ended, yet Robert never grew cynical about love. He stayed open, stayed hopeful, and that decision led him to the most unexpected encounter of his life. While visiting Argentina, Robert met a young woman named Luciana Pedraza on the street. She had no idea who he was. She simply struck up a conversation. Without fame shaping their first impression of each other, something real began to grow. Robert later admitted he noticed the age difference immediately. But instead of letting it stop him, he thought, why not? It became one of the best decisions of his life. They married in 2005 and remained together for the rest of his life, building something Hollywood rarely gets to see. Quiet, private, lasting devotion. But even in that happiness, one dream remained unfulfilled, a dream Robert rarely spoke about, but one that quietly followed him for decades. Robert never became a father. It was something he rarely discussed publicly, but when he did, he spoke with surprising honesty. In a 2007 interview, he joked that he was shooting blanks, admitting that despite trying with different partners over the years, it simply never happened. He and Luciana even considered adoption, but for reasons he never fully explained, they chose not to move forward. The closest he ever came to fatherhood was helping raise Barbara's daughters decades earlier, a quiet chapter he never forgot. Robert never chased approval, not in love, and not in his career. He criticized Stanley Kubrick, calling him an actor's enemy. He once asked, only half joking, who David Fincher even was, before admitting he'd turned down a role in Seven. He called The Lone Ranger a bad movie without hesitation, even as Hollywood poured $250 million into it. He simply asked one question about every film. Was it actually good? That honesty never faded, not even in his 80s, when his performance opposite Robert Downey Jr. in The Judge earned him one more Academy Award nomination. Then came the final months. Not a movie set. Not an interview. Just Robert, sitting quietly in a dark vest over a purple polo shirt, recording a short holiday message for the fans who had followed him for over 60 years. To all my fans, he said, have a happy Thanksgiving and a great year coming up. God bless. Simple words, but for many watching, they carried the weight of an entire lifetime. Days later came another glimpse into his ordinary life, Robert lifting a small weight in front of his laptop, still active, still disciplined, even at 95. He never relied on gyms. He preferred tennis, swimming, horseback riding, things he actually loved. But the video that broke hearts everywhere came next. For his 95th birthday, his wife Luciana created a tribute, tracing his life from a boy in a military household to one of the greatest actors of his generation. It ended with Robert smiling, taking a playful bite from a giant cookie. No grand speech. No dramatic farewell. Just joy. The caption called his life a mighty ride, ending simply, "Happy birthday, Bob, we love you." A short time later, Robert Duvall passed away peacefully at his home in Middleburg, Virginia, with Luciana beside him. In her tribute, she said that to the world, he was an Oscar-winning legend, but to her, he was simply everything. And maybe that's why his final video is so hard to watch. Not because it was dramatic, but because it wasn't. It was just Robert, smiling one last time, showing us that even legends find peace in the smallest, simplest moments.